He was walking fast, almost running. Jacket half buttoned, breath uneven, mind chasing numbers until his steps halted. A flash of movement, a cardigan slipping behind roots, a sketchbook clutched too tight, eyes darting toward shadows no one else saw. The air shifted. Birds scattered, laughter in the park thinned to silence. He froze again. Was she hiding, waiting, or warning? A child's whisper cut through the stillness. He'll come back. His pulse spiked, his hand trembled, and before the thought caught up, he was kneeling, reaching, speaking words he barely recognized. He never imagined that this moment would rewrite everything. If you want to know what happens next, stay with me until the end of the video. And if you still believe deep in your heart that God is always watching over you silently, arranging everything then right now, leave a comment saying Amen below this video. Because who knows, at the very moment you write those words, a blessing may quietly enter your life. Michael Grant rose early on Saturdays. The townhouse in Midtown Atlanta gleamed with polished marble and tidy order, but the silence inside was so heavy he often slipped out before it swallowed him whole. Once long ago the rooms had carried laughter. Now they echoed only with his own footsteps and the soft click of the door behind him. Spring was stirring in the city. Dogwood trees along the sidewalks opened pale blossoms that looked almost luminous against the sky. Michael walked without aim toward Piedmont Park, letting the rhythm of the city carry him. Families spread blankets on the grass. Children chased soccer balls. A jogger's radio spilled out an old Motown song. To everyone else, it was a morning of promise. To Michael, it felt like walking through someone else's life, invisible, untouched. By late morning, he paused near an old oak at the edge of the park. Its roots rose like the bones of a giant sleeping under the earth. That was when he noticed her, a small figure almost hidden in the crook of the tree. A girl, no more than 7 knees drawn up cardigan frayed at the sleeves, jeans stained at the knees. In her arms she clutched a battered sketchbook as if it were a shield. Her head was bowed, shoulders tight, as though she braced against a storm no one else could see. Michael's first thought was that she must be waiting for someone. A mother, perhaps, but the longer he watched, the clearer it became she wasn't waiting. She was hiding. The sight struck him with an unexpected jolt, sharp enough to catch his breath. Not pity recognition. That posture of retreat, the silent wish to disappear, he knew it too well. Careful not to startle her, he knelt a few feet away. His voice was low, steady. "Hello there," he said. "Are you all right?" The girl flinched, pressing the sketchbook tighter. Wide eyes flicked up at him, fearful, guarded, older than her years. "It's all right," Michael went on gently. "I won't hurt you." He unscrewed the cap of a water bottle, set it on the ground between them. A peace offering, nothing more. For a long moment she didn't move. Then, quick as a sparrow, she reached for it, clutching the bottle in both hands, but not drinking. "Are you waiting for someone?" Michael asked, his tone as casual as he could manage. Her lips moved. The sound came so soft he almost missed it. "No, I'm hiding." The words tightened something deep in him, from who he asked carefully. Her eyes darted toward the far fence where the shadows seemed heavier. She whispered, barely audible, "He always comes back." Michael stayed still, heart pounding. In that instant he understood whatever haunted this child had followed her into the daylight. And for the first time in years, he felt the silence around him shift, no longer empty, but full of a choice he could not turn away from. The decision was made before Michael even knew he had made it. He could not leave the child in the park. So when the sun began to dip, He found himself walking her back through midtown streets, her small steps quiet beside his own. She said little, only held her sketchbook tight as though it were the only safe place she owned. His townhouse, usually so orderly and cold, seemed to hesitate with him at the threshold. Michael felt the weight of the key in his hand. Letting a stranger in was one thing. Letting a frightened child in was something altogether different. But when he opened the door, the silence that greeted him no longer felt like his own. It belonged to her as well. Inside, the scent of cinnamon drifted from the kitchen. Clara Ramirez, housekeeper and companion of many quiet years, was rolling dough with her sleeves dusted in flour. She looked up, her sharp eyes narrowing as she saw the girl at Michael's side. "Senor Grant?" she asked carefully. Michael's voice caught. "This is Emily. She'll be staying for a little while." Clara's expression softened instantly. She came forward, not with questions, but with a grandmother's instinct. "Mija," she murmured, kneeling, "you like cookies?" "They are warm, just out of the oven." Emily pressed back against Michael's leg, eyes darting from the tiled floor to the counter. Even when Clara gently placed a cookie in her hand, the girl held it like a fragile stone, not daring to eat. Michael watched awkward in his own home. He had built a life on precision appointments, contracts, markets that bent to logic. But here in his spotless kitchen stood a child whose silence refused every system he knew. Later, Clara offered to draw a bath. Emily stiffened, clutching her sketchbook so tightly her knuckles whitened. Michael understood then this book was her shield. Without it, she felt naked. "You can keep the door open," Clara soothed, her Spanish lilt soft. "No one will bother you here." Still, Emily shook her head, so Michael pulled a chair to the hallway outside the bathroom. He opened a book, but barely read, his voice stumbling as he read aloud a story to the empty air. Through the crack in the door, he saw at last a small cardigan, dropped damply to the tile. When Emily emerged, wrapped in an oversized towel, her hair clung in damp strands to her cheek. Clara dried and braided it with gentle hands. The girl endured, still clutching her sketchbook, but her breathing had slowed. At the kitchen table, she picked at a grilled cheese sandwich, savouring each bite as though it might disappear. Michael sat across from her, listening to the quiet, the kind that for once did not feel empty. Clara hummed softly at the sink, filling the silence with warmth. When bedtime came, Michael showed Emily the guest room, the sheets, fresh pillows fluffed. She shook her head quickly. "Can I stay here?" she whispered, pointing toward the kitchen. Michael hesitated, then nodded. "Wherever you feel safe." He spread a blanket under the kitchen table, set a pillow and a glass of water nearby. Emily crawled into the makeshift nest, clutching her sketchbook to her chest. Michael sat a few feet away on a stool, his laptop forgotten. Hours passed, the house settling into night. Clara tiptoed by once, leaving a nightlight on the counter. Emily's breathing slowed, her fingers tracing the blanket. For the first time, her eyelids grew heavy, the sketchbook slipping just a little from her grasp. Michael leaned back, exhaustion tugging at him, but something deeper holding him awake. In that fragile silence, he saw it clearly. Bringing Emily home was not only about rescuing her, it was about finding the courage to let life back in. By dawn, the house no longer felt cold. The quiet wasn't empty anymore. It was a promise. Sunday morning came softly, a golden wash of light through the wide kitchen windows. Michael moved quietly, setting out coffee, letting the warmth of the mug steady his restless thoughts. Across the room, Emily sat cross-legged at the table, her battered sketchbook open, a pencil scratching softly across the page. She did not hum, did not speak, but the air around her felt different, thick with the effort of memory she could not yet put into words. For a while, Michael pretended to busy himself with the newspaper. In truth, his eyes kept returning to her. She drew with an intensity far beyond her years, pausing, erasing darkening lines, until her small hand trembled. Finally, she stopped the pencil resting between her fingers and tilted the book ever so slightly toward him. The sight took his breath. Jagged shapes crowded the page shadows, with teeth looming figures that swallowed the margins. In the corner, a child was curled tight, as though folding herself small enough to disappear. He turned a page and another, and the theme repeated: monsters, storm cloud houses, windows barred by heavy lines. Yet among the darkness there were other images. A woman with long hair drawn in softer strokes, angel wings unfurled. A tree with white blossoms, each petal careful and bright. A small house glowing beneath the sun, though the figures at its door seemed only half formed. Michael pointed to the angel. His voice dropped to a hush. "Is this your mother?" Emily nodded. A single tear slid, but she kept her chin high. "She tried to keep me safe," she whispered, "but she had to go away." Grief pressed against Michael's chest, memories of his own wife rising unbidden, the silence after her passing the empty rooms. He forced his voice steady. She must have been very brave. Emily's fingers traced the outline of the dogwood tree, her touch tender, almost reverent. She said if I drew this tree, she'd find me. But, her words faltered, "I don't think she can." Michael wanted to promise otherwise, but he held back. Instead, he placed his hand on the table, open palm down. Not touching, only waiting. Emily's gaze flicked to it, wary, but for a heartbeat, her small shoulder leaned in his direction before she pulled back into her sketchbook. By afternoon, worry outweighed hesitation. Michael stepped into his office and called Dr. Susan Walker, the school counsellor a colleague had recommended. He explained about the park, the silence, the drawings. On the other end of the line, Dr. Walker's tone was calm, seasoned, steady. "Bring her tomorrow," she said. "We'll meet the three of us. Sometimes children need space before they can trust. Sometimes they just need someone to keep showing up." The words lingered with him long after he hung up. When he returned to the kitchen, Emily was bent over the sketchbook again. This time her pencil gouged the paper, the lines so dark they nearly tore the page. Her lips moved, whispering as though to herself. Michael leaned closer and heard the name. Victor. The sound was brittle, a shard of glass in the quiet room. Michael felt the weight of it. A name, a shadow finally given form. Victor Kane. Stepfather. The man she feared would always come back. That evening, Michael walked down the driveway to check the mailbox. Bills, advertisements, and a single sheet of notebook paper folded once. He opened it under the porch light. Block letters carved in angry strokes. "She's mine. Stay away." The words chilled him. He scanned the street, the hedges, the corners where shadows gathered. For a moment he thought he saw movement by the fence, a man's shape lingering too long, then slipping away into darkness. He crumpled the paper in his hand, his heart hammering, and stepped quickly back inside. Clara was at the stove, humming low in Spanish, the smell of soup filling the air. Emily was under the kitchen table again, curled with her sketchbook pressed to her chest, as though it were armour. Michael forced his voice calm, but the paper burned in his pocket, its threat undeniable. The townhouse no longer felt like a sanctuary. The silence that once weighed only on him now carried a different edge, the hush before a storm. and Michael understood that the shadows were not finished with them. The evening began the way Michael wished all evenings could. The kitchen was alive with small sounds, Clara's low humming as she rolled dough, the soft clatter of pans, Emily's quiet laughter as she sneaked bits of cookie dough and darted glances at her guardian. For a brief hour, the townhouse no longer felt like a monument to loss, but something warmer, closer to home. Michael leaned against the counterarms, folded content simply to watch. The air was scented with vanilla cinnamon, and the faint fizz of seltzer poured over ice. He almost allowed himself to believe this could last. But safety, he had learned, often invited interruption. It happened in a hush so sudden that all three noticed. The radio, which had been playing an old pop song, faded into static. The oven timer clicked, then fell silent. Even Emily, perched on a stool, stopped mid-gesture, her small head cocked as if listening for something outside the walls. Then came the sound, a dull thud, heavy, deliberate. Not a neighbour's door, not a car on the street. Michael's heart thudded once hard. He caught Clara's eye. No words were needed. She reached for Emily, her voice steady, though her eyes flickered with fear. "Come, Carino," she whispered. "We're going to the back hall." Emily obeyed, her sketchbook pressed tight to her chest. Michael watched them disappear down the corridor toward the reinforced door he had installed months ago, but never truly believed he would need. Only when he heard the faint click of the safe room lock did he move. He pulled his phone from his pocket, opening the security app. Grainy footage flickered a man climbing the back fence, moving fast, low. The shape was unmistakable. Victor Kane. The man's energy was frantic, his head jerking from side to side as though the night itself might seize him. Slung over one shoulder was a duffel bag. When he dropped to the ground, the camera caught its contents as it shifted open rope duct tape and the glint of a crowbar. Michael's stomach clenched. He crouched behind the kitchen island, dialing 911 with hands that trembled but held steady enough. His voice was low but urgent. "There's an intruder at my house. Midtown Grant residence. He's armed. Please hurry." Outside, the backyard lights snapped on, automatically flooding the grass in harsh white. The cameras tracked every move. Victor tested the back door, then swung the crowbar with a metallic shriek. Wood splintered. Michael forced his breath slow. "You're not getting in," he muttered under his breath, half prayer, half defiance. He positioned himself so the nearest camera caught his face. If Victor wanted to see him, he would see resolve, not fear. The crowbar struck again, rattling the frame. Upstairs, Michael thought he heard the muffled sob of a child, followed by Clara's soft voice soothing in Spanish. He pressed the phone closer to his ear, straining for the sound of sirens. It felt like hours, though only minutes passed. Finally, the rising wail cut through the night. Red and blue lights swept across the backyard fence. 2 officers vaulted over, sprinting toward the figure at the door. Victor spun, panic flashing across his face. He stumbled toward the fence, but one officer caught him hard at the shoulders. The crowbar clattered to the ground. The duffel spilled open the rope and tape, spilling onto the wet grass. "Hands where we can see them," Victor cursed, thrashing, but was forced to the ground. One officer pulled his arms back in cuffs, while another read him his rights in a calm, practiced voice. Michael stayed crouched, hardly aware of the tension draining from his body until his knees nearly buckled. A knock at the back door followed. "Mr. Grant Police." "It's safe now." He opened the door, swallowing against the tremor in his voice as he let them inside. The officers confirmed the arrest words like attempted kidnapping and breaking and entering, circling in the air, heavy but unreal. Michael barely heard them. He was already moving down the hall. He knocked softly at the safe room door. "It's me," he called, his voice breaking. The lock clicked. Clara opened the door just enough for Emily to burst out. She flung herself into Michael's arms, sobbing, her small body shaking violently. "He tried to get me," she gasped. "I heard him. I thought." Her words dissolved in tears. Michael held her close, rocking gently, burying his face in her damp hair. "No one will ever take you from me," he whispered, fierce and trembling. "You're safe. I promise. I promise." Clara knelt beside them, wrapping both in a firm embrace, silent tears streaking her cheeks. For a long moment, none of them moved. Fear and relief mingled in the dim hallway, the night finally still. When the officers entered again to reassure him, their voices were steady. "He'll be charged with attempted kidnapping. With the evidence you have, the court will see exactly how dangerous he is." Michael nodded, his arms still tight around Emily. She clung to him, her sketchbook wedged between them, no longer a shield, but a reminder of the darkness she had survived. That night, after the house fell quiet again, Michael sat at the edge of her makeshift bed, watching her chest rise and fall, finally steady. In her sleep, the sketchbook slid open to a new drawing, a tree in bloom, its branches wide, two small figures beneath it. The monsters were gone from the corners. Michael leaned back, exhaustion pulling at him, but his resolve sharper than ever. The shadows were real, but so were love and courage. And for the first time, he believed they could win. The courthouse stood like a fortress of red brick and white columns, sunlight gleaming across its steps. To Michael, it felt less like a building and more like a crucible where every decision would be weighed, every truth tested. Inside, marble floors shone under tall windows. People filled the benches: Andrea Lewis, from CPS Dr. Susan Walker, Clara in her best pearls, even colleagues from Michael's company who had come quietly in support. Their presence steadied him, though his pulse still pounded with every tick of the clock. Emily sat beside him on the front bench, her blue dress, neat cardigan buttoned carefully. Sketchbook clutched in her lap. She looked so small against the high wooden panels of the courtroom, yet her gaze was steady on Michael's hand, wrapped firmly around hers. Judge Simmons entered, her expression calm but piercing. A hush settled. The case began. The district attorney presented the evidence first: the late-night break-in, the crowbar, the rope, and tape. The note left in Michael's mailbox. Officers testified to Victor Kane's arrest, their words clear, professional, undeniable. Then Clara spoke. Her voice shook at first, but she found strength in memory. She told of the nights she found Emily curled beneath the kitchen table, too afraid to sleep in a bed. She described the girl's careful way of holding food, as though each bite might be her last. And she spoke of Michael, his patience, his watchfulness, the way he read aloud outside the bathroom door so the child would not feel alone. Next came Dr. Walker. She described Emily's drawings, the monsters that once filled every page, and the slow shift toward flowers and light. "This is not an accident," she said firmly. "It is the result of safety, of trust built carefully, day by day. Grant has given her something no child can do without the chance to believe she is safe." Andrea Lewis added her report from CPS, evidence of abuse patterns of fear. Emily's own whispered words about a stepfather who yelled, struck, and threatened. She looked directly at the judge. Returning her would place her at grave risk. That is not speculation. It is fact. Finally, Michael rose. He was not a man easily shaken in boardrooms, but here his voice came rough, stripped of polish. "I lost my family once," he said simply. "Grief hollowed me out. For years I thought I had nothing left to give. But when I found Emily in that park, hiding with her sketchbook, I understood I was being asked to choose. to step forward or to walk away. I cannot walk away again. She is not just a responsibility. She is my daughter in every way that matters. The room was still as he sat, his hands trembling against his knees. Then came the hardest moment. Judge Simmons called Emily forward. Michael knelt beside her, whispering, "You're so brave. I'll be right here." Emily nodded, climbed into the witness chair, her sketchbook balanced on her knees. The judge's voice softened. "Emily, can you tell me how you feel living with Mr. Grant?" Emily's chin quivered, but she opened her book. The first pages showed dark sketches, the monsters, the jagged lines, the small figure curled tight. She turned them slowly, letting the courtroom see. A murmur rippled through the benches. Then she flipped to a new page. A dogwood tree in bloom. 3 figures beneath it, a tall man, a woman with kind eyes, and a little girl smiling. Her voice, when it came, was small but steady. "When I lived with Victor, I was scared all the time. I drew monsters because that's what it felt like. Monsters everywhere." She touched the page with the tree. "Now I can draw flowers. I'm not scared anymore. When I'm with Michael, I feel safe. I want to stay safe. I want to stay with my family." The room held its breath. Even the judge seemed to pause longer than usual, her eyes lingering on the child before her. At last, Judge Simmons closed the file with deliberate care. Her voice was firm, resonant. "This court hereby terminates the temporary guardianship of Mr. Victor Kane and grants temporary sole custody of Emily to Mr. Michael Grant. A hearing for permanent custody and adoption will follow. In the meantime, a protective order is issued prohibiting all contact from Mr. Kane." There was no applause, only a quiet ripple sighs of relief. Tears brushed from eyes, the release of hope long held back. Clara wept openly. Dr. Walker dabbed her eyes. Andrea Lewis nodded once firmly. Emily returned to Michael's side. She leaned close, whispering so softly it might have been only for him. "Does this mean I can really call you Dad?" Michael laughed through the tightness in his throat, bending to gather her into his arms. "Always," he said, voice breaking. "Always, forever." They walked out together into the sunlight, hand in hand. For the first time, Emily did not look over her shoulder. And for the first time, Michael felt the future stretch wide before them, no longer a hollow echo, but a field in bloom waiting to be lived. Spring deepened, and Atlanta seemed to glow beneath the canopy of dogwood blossoms. Streets shimmered with pink and white, and Michael's townhouse, once a mausoleum of silence, now carried the sounds of life. Each morning began with small footsteps rushing down the hall. The clatter of dishes as Clara fussed in the kitchen, and Emily's soft laughter, fragile at first, then growing freer with every passing week. The sterile order of Michael's old life had given way to something gentler, cookies cooling on the counter drawings taped to the refrigerator, music drifting from an open window. Clara declared they needed a family day. She filled the house with the smell of fresh bread and cinnamon while friends gathered in the garden. Andrea Lewis from CPS arrived, with her easy smile, Dr. Walker, with a sundress and warm embrace. Even a few colleagues from Michael's company who had quietly cheered him on. Beneath the dogwood trees, Emily strung paper garlands and pinned up her sketches. No monsters, now only trees in bloom, children, laughing sunlight stretching across every page. Michael watched her dart between guests, cheeks flushed, hair flying her joy, so radiant it felt like sunlight itself. More than once, she returned to his side, slipping her hand into his. Each time he marveled at how much she had changed and how much she had changed him. Later, as the guests departed, Michael asked if she wanted a drive, just the two of us. Emily nodded with quiet understanding. Clara packed a basket of wildflowers, and together they drove through quiet streets until they reached a small cemetery lined with willows. Emily walked ahead, her steps light the basket swinging at her side. She stopped before a simple headstone, softened by moss. Kneeling, she placed the flowers gently at its base. Then she slipped a drawing beside them, a dogwood tree, 3 figures beneath its branches smiling. Her voice was steady, though her eyes glistened. "I miss you, Mummy, but I'm safe now. Michael takes care of me. I think you'd like him." Michael stood behind her, his chest tight with humility. After a moment he knelt and rested a hand gently on her back. His words were soft-spoken, as much to the memory resting there as to the child beside him. "I'll always protect her. I promise." They lingered in silence, listening to the breeze whisper through the trees, until Emily rose and took his hand. Together they walked back into the sunlight. That evening, as the house settled into dusk, Emily climbed onto her bed and replaced an old sketch on the wall, the one filled with monsters, with a new drawing. It showed 3 hearts beneath a blooming tree bright with colour. She turned to Michael, eyes shining. "Good night, Dad. I love you." Michael brushed a strand of hair from her cheek, his voice steady. "Forever, Emily. I love you forever." As he closed the door, he paused, taking in the sound of her breathing, the glow of her nightlight, the gentle hush of a home no longer empty. Outside, the dogwoods gleamed in the moonlight, their petals drifting like confetti on the grass. Inside, love, hard-won, steadfast, true, finally defined their future. The past no longer held them captive. The spring, with all its promise, belonged to them at last. Today's story comes to an end, but its echo still lingers in the heart. What do you think? Give us a score from 1 to 10 and feel free to share a few words in the comments. Every voice here is valued and heard. Before you go, let me ask you gently, are you doing okay today? If your heart feels heavy, let this place be a quiet corner where you can share and find comfort. See you again in the next bedtime story, where love and hope remind us that no matter how dark the night may seem, kindness will always prevail.